the word go forth.
Fool me once.
Are you fired up?
I'm not a crook.
Are you ready to go?
Shame on you.
It's Abe Lincoln's Top Hat, hosted by Ben Kissel.
Fool me, can't get fooled again.
Welcome to the show, everyone. I'm Ben Kissel with Marcus Parks.
Hey, Ben.
How are you, buddy?
I'm okay. Just watched that rip-roaring press briefing.
That was exciting. A press briefing. Really exciting stuff. Sean Spicer, he had his first press conference today, and we'll talk a little bit about that coming up here later on in the episode. First, we got to start with the inauguration. We got Travis Irvine is with us. He's a reporter for Mediaite, and he was on the ground during the big day, January 20th, 2017, when John Trump officially became the president of the United States.
It was very intense, and I was out there for Mediaite. They want me to interview a bunch of news people. Mm-hmm. Here's the tough thing about the job: news people don't want to talk to me. I'm gonna get fired.
Well, that's good. But you are with Mediaite right now, so you were actually there at the inauguration. And what was it? What was the mood like? Obviously we saw some of the protests. Some individuals did turn violent, although it seemed like a fairly small group of people. They busted up a Starbucks because that'll show them, and they painted a limo. They basically
they set a limo on fire.
They did. They did exactly what Roddy Piper would do to like the $1 Million Man. If it was a WWE promotion or an event like that. I don't know why they attacked the Starbucks. Schultz, who was the CEO of Starbucks, is a liberal who actually pays their workers a fairly good wage, and he provides them health care. Out of all the places to destroy, Starbucks wouldn't be one of them. Go after Dunkie. You got to attack a Dunkin' Donuts if you really want to smash a coffee store's windows,
Yeah, I went by a McDonald's later on in the day, and their windows were smashed. So maybe McDonald's, are you for the smashing that one? You like that smash?
Well, I mean, I don't like any of the smashing, but sure, McDonald's, I could see, you can rationalize it. You're a hooligan wearing a mask, and you want to get your, a McMuffin, something like that.
Yeah, and all those minimum wage workers who had to clean up all of that shit. I'm sure they got overtime on no wait. They don't get paid overtime.
Well, that's the saddest thing. If you did, Marcus, you saw the cleanup. It's just people who had to wake up earlier that day, following, January 20th. The CEOs are never cleaning up, so just stop trashing businesses, because no one is heliporting in. Landing on a heliport from a helicopter to go clean up the mess at a local Starbucks in D.C.
That would be something, though, if CEOs had to clean up all the rioting messes
I would
across the
throw a
country
brick
at their
through a window
stores.
myself.
Yeah.
But it's always just the low-rung worker who is forced to clean up the mess of these people who are supposedly representing the masses.
That's how it goes for that. It always goes for protests as well. We talk about that one protest that we saw. I think it was against global warming, but they completely and totally trashed New York City.
Yes.
And I also saw a nice little irony in Philadelphia. I saw a sign that someone, I guess, had one at one of the marches, and it was decrying the power of the rich, but it was just kind of thrown next to a trash can for somebody who works minimum wage to clean up.
Yes. And I definitely want to talk about the Women's March. I mean, one of the largest marches in U.S. history. They're saying it happened in 500 cities all across the country. Roughly 3.3 million people showed up. We had a great opportunity to be in Philadelphia this past weekend. Everyone was so phenomenal, and it was wonderful meeting the people who had marched earlier that day. We met them later that night, and actually, I met some marchers walking up 17th Street there in Philadelphia, and they randomly called out my name, and they're like, "Giant person, Big Ben Kissel, Sasquatch sighting," and I was like, "Do you guys listen to the show?" And they're like, "Yeah, we're huge fans," and it was really awesome meeting the people who marched. And when we talk about the violence, I'm talking about an isolated group of people who I believe probably would have acted similarly had Hillary been elected. There are people who just take these opportunities to be vandals. They're anarchists.
Yeah.
And they certainly don't represent the millions of people who have rational concerns about President Trump. And from what I understand, for the most part, the largest protest or march in U.S. history was very peaceful.
I don't think it was even for the most part. I think it was for the all part. I don't think there were any reports whatsoever of any kind of violence.
Well, that was only during the inauguration. We're starting to blur two very different days in D.C.
True. Well, we're talking about the weekend as a whole. But yes, that's a good point. So let's go back to and I do want to talk about the white supremacist getting punched in the face.
That was the one piece of violence everyone seems to be unilaterally okay with.
Truly thrilled about. What's the name of this guy?
Richard Spencer.
Richard Spencer. Now, he is a self-avowed white supremacist, correct?
I mean, I think he's one of those people. It's like, I'm not a white supremacist, but I'm not a white supremacist, but.
Okay. Yeah, it was interesting. We had Molly Neffel. She's a great co-host of the show Page 7 here on CCR. And her husband, Gideon, he's a great guy. We went to his wedding, and he works for the ACLU. I believe he works for the ACLU. He could not get enough of posting that footage of Spencer getting punched in the face.
It's a great
I've never
gift.
seen a dove, a peacenik, more happy with violence in my entire
And
life.
how great was it that he got punched right in the middle of trying to explain Pepe the Frog?
Oh, brilliant.
Extra
More
bonus.
exciting than John Wick 2. That's
I mean, that was the only time I think that the real world actually reached out and punched the internet.
Oh, absolutely. So let's go back to the inauguration then, which I hate that word. I can't.
It's really hard to spell, too.
Yeah, it's tough to spell. A
bunch
lot of people are misspelling it.
A lot of A's and U's, but
Yeah.
they're in different places.
It's all too confusing. I'm going to call it the inaug from now on, just to shorten it up a little bit. What was the mood from the perspective that you were at, and where were you while this happened?
Sure. So I got in about Wednesday, Thursday before the inauguration took place, and there's already a lot of things happening on the ground. They're shutting down the mall. They're putting up barriers. They're setting up the checkpoints. They've got the giant flags on the Capitol. All the media people are coming into town. And it is kind of an exciting feeling with D.C. This is my third inauguration. I went to both of Obama's inaugurations. This is the first one I was actually getting paid to cover, even though I didn't do it well.
Well, did you feel like it was a different mood? Was there a different tone to the event? I mean, obviously Trump swore, him and Sean Spicer, they proclaimed it was the largest event in presidential history when it came to actual people watching it, even though that's absolutely not true. Although if you take into account the people, 30 million, I think, roughly, who watched it on television, it might be, up there ranking when it comes to actual viewers. But people that were on the ground there, it didn't seem like there was quite as many as, let's say, Obama in 2012, 2008.
Yeah, I would definitely say, and again, not to blur between the 2 days, but the Women's March, there were way more people, and it was very observable in D.C. for that event as compared to the inauguration. And in terms of the two different vibes that we were talking about, there were protests going on during the inauguration. They were actually actively blocking the checkpoints to get into the mall, so they were trying to prevent Trump people from getting onto the mall.
Oh, my goodness.
Trump and Sean Spicer, if you guys want to use that as an excuse, feel free.
Yeah.
As to why there's no one at your event. But, in terms of like the peaceful transition of power, I mean, I was right there for all of that. It's an exciting feeling. Granted, with Trump, it's in a weird way, but for Obama to give Trump the tour of the White House, for them to drive together to the Capitol, for all the different people from all the different parties and partisans, all their rancor, they all sat there and did the thing and did the ceremony, and there were people there cheering and very happy about it. And then Trump waves off Obama in the helicopter. That was a big moment where everyone was watching Obama's helicopter leave D.C. His job is done. That's what this country is about. It's kind of weird, the institutions and the symbolic things that we got to do to make it all happen. But that action and what happened this weekend, that is what America is all about.
And we did get those adorable photos of George W. Bush. Oh, by the way, the man who has us still in the longest war in U.S. history, the man who started that war, of course, the invasion of Iraq and Afghanistan, and basically led to the destabilization of the Middle East for generations to come. But man, he is cute when he tries to put on a sombrero or whatever the hell that thing was.
poncho.
A poncho.
He couldn't
A
get on the
sombrero would
poncho.
also be adorable.
No, it was Dick
yeah,
Cheney
yeah.
sitting behind him wearing the funny hat.
That's right.
Yeah,
Dick Cheney
Dick Cheney was there?
Dick Cheney was there, and he was wearing a
Oh.
cowboy hat the whole time.
I saw the clips of Jimmy Carter, and you got Bill Clinton and Hillary Clinton. That's always fun because there's a gif going around of Bill Clinton just staring at Ivanka, really giving her the eyeball. And then Hillary looks at him and gives him an eyeball, and then she just turns and is like, whatever, I'm done with this.
What can she do anymore? I
Yeah.
mean, unbelievable. And if you look closely at the picture of Dick Cheney, who was sitting behind George W. Bush, you can see his hand up his ass. And he's actually moving around George W. Bush.
Trying to keep the poncho on, but through the ass.
Like the movie Dead Silence.
Right,
if
right.
anyone has seen that.
Yeah, but there were, some interesting, like when Chuck Schumer, when I was there the day before the inauguration, he was actually doing the mic check and running that speech. And it's interesting because when I heard it the day before, it was a lot less, I'd say he kind of ratcheted up a notch on the day of, and you could hear the Trump people just booing Schumer. I think they started yelling "lock her up," which didn't make any sense.
It did. Not at this point.
It's Chuck. It's he's not a woman that we know of, so there were some divisive moments, but I'd say overall with the parade and everything, in terms of all that symbolic inaugural passing of power, making it peaceful, I think that all went off without a hitch, except for the 200-some people who were arrested protesting, burning stuff. But it's like you said, people on the left even said, hey, that's not what we're about.
Right. And a lot of times, I know James O'Keefe, and you can argue some of his journalism. I used air quotes when I said journalism is suspect, to say the least. But he does talk about how some of those protesters are paid.
They're professionals.
Which is a strange thing to even think about.
Paid by who?
Well, they say Soros and that crew, but it's a little bit muddled up when it comes down to the actual following the money.
Those same people will point to George Soros again and again. They said that Soros had bust in protesters, and that was completely and totally untrue. I think those buses that they showed were from guys busting in for like a technology conference.
Those are we got to get them out.
That's all Gateway Pundit bullshit.
Yeah.
Gateway Pundit has again and again put forth stories like that, and they are patently untrue. They are full and they are full on fake news.
It was interesting because Trump is such a phenomenon, and the news media just absolutely loves covering him for better or for worse. Certainly, Spicer in his press conference today sort of got into an area of just like, but they're picking on us. He sort of got Milhousian. I'm not sure if Milhousian is a term, but Milhouse from The Simpsons. He sort of had that vibe towards the end of the nearly hour-long press conference.
Yeah, no, he got very, very, very whiny when people kept kind of pushing on him and the inauguration numbers. And he amended that. He amended it to say that it was not. He did not say that it was the largest that was ever attended. He meant that it was the largest audience when you combine both the people there and the people watching online. And he also definitely made sure he's like, but YouTube and and streaming and all of that. Those numbers aren't brought in because Ronald Reagan's was, I think, 40 million. He has the highest.
Oh, really?
Yeah, his 1981 inauguration was the highest at about, I think it's either 40 or 41 million.
Oh, wow. But that's like TV Nielsen ratings that you can
Nielsen
register.
Ratings.
Okay. Yeah, with the internet, there's really no way to tell. I mean, Facebook Live only
Facebook
goes,
Lies. I
Facebook
like that
Lies.
better.
What I was trying to say here is Facebook Lies. I will say
Lies.
I do use Facebook Lies for a lot of my videos, though.
That's great.
For as much as I hate it. But yeah, no, Facebook Live, there's just a little K there, and you can't really tell, how do you even monitor that? So.
Well, I definitely want to talk about the press conference a little bit more and talk about executive orders, which Donald Trump is already signing at a feverish pace right now. As a matter of fact, we are no longer going to be a part of TPP, which is something that I was actually in favor of not being a part of. So that's kind of
were a lot of
fascinating
the Bernie people,
and a lot of the Bernie people were as well. That's sort of that sort of strange Venn diagram crossover between Bernie supporters and people who could find themselves, appreciating Trump's policy when it comes to foreign trade. It's interesting because the cameras were on Donald Trump so much. They showed the pen ceremony after he was inaugurated, and this is where he signs. He can finally allow his cabinet choices to be official because obviously before he's president, it doesn't really matter. And people they clamor for these pens.
Yeah.
So Nancy Pelosi is there.
She
Chuck
wanted
Schumer
one.
was there.
He wanted one.
But I thought what was so interesting was how cordial everybody was, and you can see that Chuck Schumer and Donald Trump have a real relationship. I mean, obviously, Donald Trump being a native New Yorker and huge in business here for such a long time. Chuck Schumer basically being a staple of the Democratic Party, certainly the most powerful Democrat in New York without a doubt, and I believe second most powerful Democrat in the nation. It was interesting to see them actually. You get the veneer was sort of removed, and we could see it's just a group of chumps. And I was wondering how people would feel about that. And what did you guys feel? To me, it just proved once again, and this is sort of why I've been able to maintain less paranoia and less fear. And again, I have to clarify this, and I was talking to a fan in Philadelphia about it. I'm a huge white dude with no disabilities other than, well, that can be argued, but no official disabilities. And I wasn't a wedge issue. I'm not Muslim. I'm not a DACA child, and pray to God that Donald Trump does not allow DACA to expire. We'll have to get our friend back on, who we spoke to a few episodes back. He's a DACA kid, and I really want that to stay in place because those are innocent victims in this whole thing.
I'd like to talk about that later as far as what Spicer's comments were in the press conference concerning DACA.
Yes. And so when you see them just getting along, it does. So anyway, to my point of, maintaining some sort of like relative calm in what seems to be such a turbulent situation, I do think most of them are friends, and I think there are key things put in place that would deter someone from going rogue and becoming a true, kleptocrat, as a lot of people are calling Donald Trump, and a true authoritarian nightmare. Although, of course, that's a possibility. But did you enjoy the fact that they got along so much, or what did you guys feel? Because to me, it was like, this is all theater, and that was sort of, again, one of the reasons why I don't freak out that much, because I firmly believe Trump was at the Clintons' wedding, that kind of stuff. I just don't think they're actually that much of adversaries.
Yeah, I would say that leads into what I was saying about the peaceful transition of power, that everyone will get together to do this ceremonial stuff, to do this legal stuff where you're literally swearing in the new president. The other president flies away. He's all done. He's fine with being all done. He's not like, I ain't leaving, I think all these guys, they get along and they realize that they got to do a job. And one of the things I appreciated most was I saw Bernie Sanders walking in. I'm a big Bernie fan, obviously, but he's sitting next to Jim Inhofe. I found out it's not Inhofe, it's Inhofe.
Well, why wouldn't he change it to Inhofe? Inhofe sounds like you have a bunion.
Yeah, it does sound
awful.
a lot like a bunion infection.
It sounds like a father yelling at his dumpy 13-year-old son to get off the couch. You Inhofe, get off the couch, stop playing video games.
Well, I do think Inhofe is a child playing video games in many ways.
Yeah.
But Bernie Sanders said during the primary that him and Inhofe are very good friends. So you see them sitting there talking, just yapping like buddies.
Right.
And despite all the partisan divides, despite all the people who really hate Trump and don't want to work with him on anything, it's like, look at a thing like TPP. That was a Bernie Sanders issue. It was also a Trump issue. So
Interesting
you
overlap.
You kind of gotta, and maybe Spicer, he got a little whiny in the press conference,
Yes.
but maybe he's got a point about, hey, every time Mr. Trump looks at the TV, he sees people complaining about him, saying negative stories about him. It's hurting his feelings. Why can't you people be nice?
gotta
Oh my God, you
turn
know how
off the
sensitive he
TV.
is?
Yeah.
No, he just sits there and watches Fox
I
News all
know.
day.
I think he
Well,
just watches CNN because that's what gets his blood. But if he was watching Fox News, he'd be tweeting things like, "Boy, the media sure is doing great. Boy, they love me. I love them too."
But that's what's so funny. When it comes to Donald Trump, this is a man who, of course, forced Barack Obama to show his birth certificate in his second term of being in office, and
Right.
And of course, he's a member of the Republican Party, which basically ran on a platform for their past 4 cycles of just being obstructionists when it comes to anything that Barack Obama wanted to do, and obviously Barack Obama then. Somewhat because of that, and who knows what he would have done if he had a more lenient Congress. But then he expanded the executive powers to such a degree, and now Donald Trump is, of course, going to one-up on those executive powers, and he's going to go crazy when it comes to signing executive orders. I want to go back a little bit to what we were talking about on the last episode about Betsy DeVos and the Supreme and the Senate hearings, and about how they were all like, to your point. They do seem to be friends, and that's why it's hard for me to watch those events and not just see it as 100% pure theater.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think DeVos she's getting pulled in for another a second hearing. So
Yes.
I think if anyone is in danger, it's actually her, because her hearing was so cringeworthy. It was so cringeworthy, they're bringing her in for another one. That's how good it was.
Time for the sequel, DeVos Part 2.
Yeah.
I had a great chance to meet with some teachers in Philly, as a matter of fact, and I found out they were educators, so I talked to them about DeVos because I said some things on the last episode that got people riled. Mm-hmm. They got all mad at me. My Twitter, they kept on calling me a dumbass. I thought that was kind of rude. I woke up to 5 tweets in a row and be like, "You're a dumbass."
Yeah.
Which I thought that was like, is my little brother tweeting at me? But that was interesting. what do you guys think about? And of course, we did a little bit of research. We read that New York Times article about Betsy DeVos, and these people, the teachers that I spoke to, really were completely. They don't believe that she has adequate mental abilities when it comes to being the head. Of the Department of Education, just because she's never worked in a public school system, she's never worked in the public school setting, and then we found out she makes anywhere from $5 million to $25 million, somewhere in that window. That's a big window.
Yeah,
that's how wealthy these people are. They're like,
really big
we make
window.
like $5 to $25 million. I don't know. What's the decimal point to us? And it's for NeuroCore.
NeuroCore.
What the hell's NeuroCore?
NeuroCore.
You haven't heard about NeuroCore yet?
No, man, but now I want to do it.
It's NeuroCore. Are you a douche? Try NeuroCore.
It costs $3,000, either $2,000 or $3,000 for 30 sessions, and I believe what it does is it stimulates electrons in your brain as a treatment for ADD and ADHD, and she is a huge shareholder in NeuroCore, and yet she knows nothing about standardized testing. And she knows nothing about standardized testing, nor does she care to know. And I think that was the big thing that I took away from her hearing, is that I think she thought that she could kind of just skate by saying, I love charter schools are great, without knowing anything about the American public education system.
Well, and also Elizabeth Warren pointed out, she's about to be in charge of the largest student loan department, not just department, but the Department of Education gives out all the student loans to all the kids trying to go to college out there. And Elizabeth Warren, I think that was my favorite part of her questioning was, have you ever had a student loan? And, DeVos has to say, well, I was very fortunate and very, essentially what she got Betsy DeVos to say is, I have friends whose kids have had to get student loans.
Right.
And it's just
They're wealth shaming her, though. They wealth shamed her, and I didn't think that was good. I don't like wealthism. I don't like any isms.
Okay.
That's what I always said.
Well, I mean, it does, but I think asking questions like that, I mean, it does demonstrate that you're going to be putting someone into this position that has no actual real life experience with it, and also her answers, like I said, they imply that she does not care to have experience. Like, she doesn't care to find these things out.
Well, you know what's interesting, though? As I was having this conversation with the teachers, they were talking about in Philadelphia, everyone leaves when their children become 5 years old. As soon as they get into school age, they just leave and they go out to one of the suburbs, and the suburbs are nice schools. And those people have financial mobility. They have enough financial stability to be mobile, which is a privilege in itself. And the people who are in the poorer school districts, they can't move out to the suburbs. Right. And so it's almost to me like when it comes to school choice already exists for the rich. And so I feel like it wouldn't be a necessarily bad policy if it could exist for the poor also. And I'm sure I'll get a bunch of heat for that. But that
You dumbass!
I'm going to get 30 of those. But yes, again, but I understand the DeVos problems, and I get why people are hesitant to have her lead the Department of Education, simply because she has no real-world experience. And I'm a personal firm believer that real-world experience is better than any data analysis or statistical, understanding. You have to have real-world experience in order to fully comprehend what you're going on and what you're going to have to do in the future. When it comes to NeuroCore, though, they did Kirk Cousins. He is a former quarterback for the Washington Redskins.
Did it work?
And well, he said that it did, but then he was awful. He was a terrible quarterback.
Okay.
But and the Redskins sucked when he was their quarterback.
So NeuroCore.
Yeah, you can go to neurocorecenters.com. The NeuroCore tagline: boost your brain power in 2017.
Electrolytes, NeuroCore.
A stronger brain makes anything possible. Discover what neuroscientists have known for decades. Your brain isn't hardwired. It can change. We empower you to train your brain to achieve powerful, long-lasting results. NeuroCore.
I'm an alien prostitute. Do you want to see my 3 boobs? The future is now, and it's just as dumb as it was predicted to be, I believe. What do you think when it comes to Alex Jones and that whole Breitbart crew? We talked a little bit about Spencer being there, obviously, an alt-right, the head of the alt-right movement, although I'm sure there's some alt-righters who are like, we don't have a head. It's like, yeah, you do. Everyone is organized, and there's nothing free-thinking about anyone who subscribes to an ideology that millions of other people subscribe to, specifically one that is predicated on white nationalism. But what do you guys think? Alex Jones, he's there, and he was drunk as hell.
And I have a clip of him.
Can we play it?
Oh, hell yeah.
And I got a center. I don't need a bullhorn. I don't need any other. The will of the Republic will dominate this BS. Yeah.
1776, baby.
1776 will commence again. You like it? This is just the info war. Imagine you get in a physical fight with us. It's over. You understand that? I know you do now, don't you?
Oh,
You haven't
right.
taken the gloves off, and if you want to keep pushing with your commie Chinese and everybody else, we're going to blow your ass off the map.
Oh, my God.
All the secret weapons ain't in the control of you anymore, are they? They're now in the hands of George Washington 2.0, so I know why you're shaking in fear. I'm done. Who else wants to go?
And he's in the middle of it's the middle of the night
Right.
in Washington, D.C. He's got his microphone, and he goes, I'm done. Who else wants to talk? And then right before that, a woman calls him out.
Israel, but he's Hitler. I mean,
the press.
oh, no, really. Well, I'd love to hear about freedom of the press with them legalizing domestic propaganda under
You
Obama.
actually have liquor on your breath.
In the, oh my God.
Man has liquor on his
Oh my God. Are you a Puritan?
No, I'm just amazed that you're doing your job with liquor on your breath. Does that give you the guts to yell at women?
I need the guts. Let me tell you, I got too many guts, baby. Truth is, I drink alcohol, so I got too many guts. Anyways, you know.
Drunk while you're
No,
recording.
it's actually made up. I had the coffee earlier.
Sounds like everybody at a DUI checkpoint. No, that's a.
I had a coffee. I had a coffee. It's
I
fine.
had coffee. I had mostly Jack Daniels in the coffee. I had some coffee in there, though.
Where
he got
the
a
hell
phone call.
was that at the deplorable?
This was not at the deplorable. No, this was him walking up to some protesters.
That was the next day, though, after the deplorable, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So it
my
looks like the
God.
hangover led into just getting drunk again, and that led into random screams on the streets. This man got a phone call from Donald Trump November 9th, thanking him for all the support throughout the campaign. And now he will have access, and he does have access to the most powerful person on earth. I mean, what's so fascinating, talking about 1776 and all these things, they have their man in the White House. They are the ones in charge. You can't be anti-establishment. You are the definition of the establishment. So we'll see where that sort of wing of journalism, air quotes, I'm using that once again, where they go.
Well, Spicer today already told us where those guys are coming from. The Skype reporters.
That's right. Now, this is
They're
interesting.
coming in.
Yeah,
But
they
you-
are coming in. They're coming live. InfoWars is coming live from Austin,
InfoWars.
Texas.
Excuse me, Sean Spicer. I have another question. Has 76 commenced? All right, I'm done. Somebody else go.
Yeah, that was an interesting thing from the press conference today. Sean Spicer talking about they're going to have 4 new televisions set up that will have Skype connections, so smaller journalist institutions
Which
can
in
then
theory,
have access. I like that,
in
actually.
theory, is great.
Yeah, it is.
In theory, but
In
it's all going to be
theory.
alt-right network. I mean, it's all going to be alt-right outlets.
I cannot wait for Alex Jones to ask a question.
How do you get your bodies?
Excuse me, President Trump. Are you George Washington 2.0?
I think I heard he was.
Or is it more of like a 3.0?
Oh, my goodness. You,
All right, someone else can have one. I'm all
you
done.
have liquor on your breath.
I had a coffee.
Sounds like a lot more than a coffee. My goodness. Oh boy! But that is a fascinating development, and it's just strange now to see this all come to fruition. I mean, this is the new reality. Alex Jones and that group of people are in the. I mean, Steve Bannon. You know, he was obviously the chief strategist for Donald Trump. He withheld the storm. He withstood the storm that came against him, and of course his company Breitbart. He's still there in Donald Trump's ear, and so I understand again going back to the 3+ million people that marched. I completely understand the concerns that people are having, and again, hopefully, clearer heads will be able to prevail in that situation. Do you want to talk a little bit about DACA? Mm-hmm. And so Spicer was asked about it. Donald Trump has promised in his hardline America First policies, he's promised to let it expire, which we cannot be in favor of in any way, shape, or form. I highly recommend you call up, your local representatives and just demand that DACA does not expire. These are innocent victims in a much larger problem, in a much larger world than they ever expected. I mean, most of these kids come over 6, 7, 8 years old. Sometimes they're infants, and they're not over here because they chartered a plane themselves and they had the idea to immigrate to America illegally.
Absolutely not. And the there were two questions that came up about DACA. They tried to nail him to the wall on this, but what he said is that he said, listen, we have priorities. We're going to go after people who have criminal records. We're going to go after people who have overstayed their visas. And he didn't say anything about DACA. What the subtext there is we're not coming for you yet, but we're coming.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, that's what he says. So we've got priorities. We're going after the people with criminal records. He said nothing about extending DACA. What it was what I read out of that was we are going to come for you, but enjoy your last 6 months in America.
Of course, we have the situation where Barack Obama, because the press, I don't think, covered him enough, quite frankly, or critically enough, which is always one of the great benefits of having a Republican in office. We are definitely going to get all of the negative things that person is doing. Barack Obama deported roughly 2 million people. Donald Trump has promised to deport roughly the same amount. There's 900,000 people, I believe, currently registered with DACA, and they're so easy to find because they followed all the rules that the Obama administration asked them to follow. They gave them all of their, their address, their full names, their numbers. They can be, I wouldn't be surprised if they put a damn chip in their necks to be able to track them. And so, if you are Donald Trump and you do want to just have a simple grab and a simple look what I did, boom, 140 characters or less, you can tell the American people you were able to deport 900,000 because all you have to do is go to their home and pick them up.
Yeah, and that's a frustrating part of this whole policy because,
Right.
even when Trump was going out against illegal immigrants and everything, he was also saying, well, we want to respect the people who follow the rules. Well,
Right.
the DACA kids followed the rules.
They did.
So you're changing the rules in the middle of the game. It's not fair to them.
And I don't know if he would I actually don't know if he would do that because the optics of that would be terrible. Since these DACA kids have been here for forever, all of their friends are American. The people that they work for are American. These people, they are, for all intents and purposes, American.
Yeah,
they are in the country, and all of a sudden you're going to bring in shock troops to take away people that others consider to be American citizens. I don't think so. I don't think you're going to be able to do that. I think the backlash of that would be I think that would actually turn a lot of people against him.
Yeah.
Oh, absolutely. I don't disagree. And, people talk about, Barack Obama was talking about going out and talking to your neighbor, get off of Twitter and get off of social media and go to speak with your neighbor. The one thing is, I guarantee you, neighbors would come together in solidarity for that one family that would be deported. I think that neighborhoods would, rise up, and that would be a fascinating situation to see. And, that would be beautiful in a way, but hopefully it doesn't have to come to us forced to go out and protect our neighbors from getting torn out of their homes by the government. I mean, how horrifying does that sound?
Oh,
the imagery alone is
the idea.
not to harken back to World War II because I think it's an overused analogy, but you really can't think of it.
You can harken back to Elian Gonzalez. We all remember that picture.
Oh, that was a great photo.
Oh, that was a brutal. And of course, then he went back to Cuba. Yeah,
and he's running a very successful cigar company.
Is
That's
it really?
fake news. I'm sorry, that's fake news. I made that up. I made that up. But no, I wanted because that feeds perfectly into. You're absolutely right. I don't think neighbors would let it happen. I don't. Just the idea has scared people enough that it leads perfectly into what we have forgotten to talk about the Women's March. I'm sorry we've left it out, but
no, we're talking about it. It's all in there.
But that's what I saw a lot of. You saw everybody showing up just on the idea that they're afraid of all the things the Republicans and Trump are going to do. That's why there was 500,000 people in D.C. for the Women's March of all colors. Everyone, the classic chant where the women go, my body, my choice, and then the men go, her body, her choice. Everybody's backing each other up. You got men, women, people of all colors marching together, gay, straight, and the Women's March was much bigger than just women's issues. It was LGBTQ issues. It was immigrant issues. And so I think you're absolutely right, Ben, because that does the idea that people,
sort of
people will not let that happen to our American friends, and that's the nice thing about this new millennial generation. We all have friends from all these different backgrounds, and we are going to stand up for each other. So,
although I got to say, the Women's March, those ovary hats.
The pink hats were.
Yeah, I couldn't stop thinking about the youngest daughter who I love from Bob's Burgers.
Dina.
No. Tina's the horny one. She's hilarious.
Yeah, I can't remember either, but yeah, I'll agree with that. But let's not forget, as far as executive orders today, he has already signed one against abortion. He signed, he reinstated a federal ban on U.S. funding for international health organizations that counsel women on family planning options that include abortion. It has already begun.
Right.
Yeah, the assault has begun. It starts with other countries first, not America first, interestingly
enough. Yeah, I mean, a lot of people were surprised that we even had funding for other countries when it comes to their female health and those sorts of things. But yes, it's definitely begun. This is the first step. And Spicer was asked about that today at his first press conference, and he didn't really clarify regarding defunding of Planned Parenthood and things like that.
He just said pro-life, pro-life, pro-life.
Mark my words, like exactly what happened in the campaign and exactly what happened January 9th after Trump won, Planned Parenthood is going to be, in my personal opinion, financially fine. I think there's going to be a huge amount, a groundswell of support from small donations coming from all over the country, and Planned Parenthood is going to be fine financially. But the problem would be then what will happen from the legislative level regarding their institution as a whole. Texas already has, I believe it's 2 facilities that women can seek an abortion, and it's one of the largest. I think there's literally 2. And things like that. So it does, so I understand the fear. I don't think Planned Parenthood, obviously, I think there was a misconception that if the government defunds, it's going to shut down. It won't shut down. But, what does it say to the other more conservative states regarding their facilities?
Oh, sure. Conservative states have already started. I mean, yeah, if they...
I'm not for defending Planned Parenthood, but I just want to say, again, like we were talking about, I think people are going to just give them a lot of money.
Right. Well, and that would be an interesting side effect. It is again, the Women's March answer to the inauguration of Donald Trump, and in a lot of these states, you already see a lot of... there's only one abortion facility in some of these southern states. I know in Ohio, which is a fairly purple state, the heavy Republican legislature and John Kasich signed 20-week abortion bans, right? Where it's like if it's after 20 weeks, tough cookies. So right. It's already started in the states, and now if it's coming from the federal level too, that's going to do some damage.
Right. So yeah, we'll definitely have to stay active, and I thought. That was a beautiful protest, beautiful march. It's so great to see democracy in action. And again, it was extremely peaceful.
I will say it was so crowded in D.C. No one could move. And no one knew where the march was. And I had friends that come in from out of town and everything. I think everyone was very confused, but everyone was very happy and positive.
I just want to make sure that everybody remembers that the fight is only beginning.
Yes, this is day one.
Yeah, this is day one. Those protests like that, it is beautiful. It is wonderful that it happened, but we cannot spend all of our time patting ourselves on the back, talking about what an amazing job that we've done.
Right. The job begins now.
Yeah. I remember I read a New York Times article a couple of days ago. A guy was saying that he was watching the inauguration, but he had to turn it off because he got scared. Fuck
God
you.
Damn.
You had to turn it off because you got scared? You're scared? Fine. It's okay to be scared. It's perfectly understandable to be scared and to be afraid, but we can't run away. This is not the time to run away. This is not the time to turn off your phone because you're getting a little frightened. You have to face this shit.
You got to face it. This is 76 2.0.
1776. Powerful stuff.
Face the fear. I agree. Yeah. Everybody should run for office, too. I really think millennials got to start. This is a local election year. Start jumping up for school board, city council, town, dog catcher, literally anything you can do to get involved. Because you nailed it on a point earlier, Ben. Those people, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, all the people using this pen, they're just people who worked their way up and got there, and every single American citizen can run for office and do the same.
Right. And, it is interesting. And I think, when it comes to defunding Planned Parenthood, again, if you are a conservative-leaning person, you don't think the government should have any say in a practice that you are completely repulsed by, such as, something like abortion. So Donald Trump will have a lot of his base supporting his decision to defund Planned Parenthood. And I certainly understand that perspective if you are coming from that perspective. It's just, that's the interesting thing about politics. So he was able to get 2 cabinet members so far. Rex Tillerson is in. And now
he already got 2, and now he's got 2 more to this week. Rex Tillerson and CIA Pompeo.
Tom Pompeo.
Yeah,
Pompeo. And at this point, Barack Obama, I think, had like roughly 7 or 8 people. So the Democrats are, pretty slow on, on approving his cabinet picks. And of course, we're finding out a little bit more about Russia and General Mike Flynn. If he's had some communications with the Russians. And a lot of people were wondering what they were talking about. And apparently what we learned at this press conference today, the Russians had one of the largest tragedies in Russian history. Christmas Day, December 25th, there was a plane carrying the military choir, the military band, and it crashed. And that really sucked.
92 people died.
92 people died. So Mike Flynn called the Russians then, and Putin lost his favorite trombonist, and that was really a tragedy. I can't imagine losing your entire military band. That's a strange, because then I guess who do you call up? Pussy Riot maybe or something like that.
They're in prison. They're still in prison.
Yeah. Could be.
Yeah, he said it was about 4 things. It was about number 1, the Russian choir. That's what he brought up first. Number 2, season's greetings.
Mm-hmm. That's good.
And number 3, I can't remember what 3 and 4 is. All I remember is the season's greetings and the Russian choir. Fuck.
I guess you gotta break up the choir so you don't lose them all in one plane. That's not good.
Yeah, I think one of them was about the Russian ambassador getting shot in Turkey. As well,
yes.
like condolences on that guy. He just kept sending condolences for all the people the CIA were killing,
right?
Secretly, fake news.
And he will be getting. He wants to pull out of NAFTA or at least renegotiate NAFTA. And all they want to do, and this is what Spicer consistently talked about, he wants bilateral trade deals. He just wants 2, countries dealing with one another. And it does make sense when he talks about NAFTA. In my personal opinion, I know conservatives that I know, like my friend Meghan McCain. She cannot believe there is a Republican in office who is against free trade. Free trade was a conservative. That was a cornerstone of the conservative movement for so long. And, of course, Obama went right along with the whole tradition of free trade in this country. But when it comes to NAFTA, talking about how we have 11 different countries, many of them extremely small, all carrying the exact same amount of power around. And in Donald Trump's America First, in his America, vision, of his vision of this nation as being first in everything, he just can't deal with the idea that a smaller country would have the same amount of power in a trade deal as we do. So that's why he's trying to get rid of NAFTA and all those things and try to renegotiate it. And I think if he can succeed with that, I'm not necessarily against it. That's the strange thing about Donald Trump. That's the populist streak. We can talk about the social issues, and they're very real and very valid. Yeah. But then he also has this economic message that I don't necessarily. I want to see what it looks like. I've never lived in a world without. We lived in the world before NAFTA, but not really. And of course, TPP, we nipped that in the bud. Speaking of abortions, that was certainly in its infancy. TPP was still in utero when that was done away with. So it'll be fascinating to see what happens with these trade deals. Day one, this has been an extremely active 24 hours for the first day of a presidency.
He met with a bunch of top CEOs in the morning to discuss how they could reinvigorate the economy, and he says, according to Sean Spicer's statements, it sounds like he wants to meet with them again in a month and then quarterly each year. But then this afternoon, he's meeting with labor leaders. He's meeting with all these folks. So yeah, it's this strange, Venn diagram.
Exactly.
Where it's the Bernie Sanders populist progressive issues mixing with populist Republican issues.
And then of course, anything that Pence wants to do on social issues is going to be troublesome and problematic and scary to the people who will be affected by that.
And speaking of which, we have a Supreme here. Spicer said today that we're going to hear of a Supreme Court nomination in the next couple weeks.
Oh my God! It might be Judge Napolitano from Fox News.
That is not how you say that.
How do you say his name? I've never been able to say it.
It's Neapolitan ice cream.
Oh, that's right. And the interesting thing, Michael Flynn, he is working, KT McFarland is working close with him. She's his top aide, and I used to go on Red Eye with her all the time. Really nice woman. She was a Rubio supporter, and then she did slowly, as a frog boils, turn into a Trump supporter. It was so fascinating to watch that transition happen in real time. Day by day, once it just became real that Trump was going to be the nominee. It's so fascinating to see people justify it. Just pivot everything they believe in just a little bit. And you can, if you squint your eyes just so, Donald Trump looks like Ronald Reagan.
Yeah.
It really is fascinating.
Yeah, you see him fall in line.
You do. And they certainly, everyone, the parties went back to their DNA without a doubt. Although Marco Rubio has said that he has some issues with a few cabinet choices.
Or his grilling of Rex Tillerson on Russia was pretty epic. But I guess in the last few days they've met personally, talked for 90 minutes, and Rubio is now going to support Tillerson with reservation. So I think Tillerson's through today.
And McCain will as well, and Lindsey Graham also will. With reservation, but whatever, it's a yes or no.
Yeah.
So a yes has the same amount of power with a reservation or without a reservation. And I have to clarify, on the last episode, I said that Trump's policies and the Republican policies right now economically, they want to increase the budget to $17 trillion. Over 10 years, it'll be $9.7 trillion, roughly $10 trillion. They will increase the deficit in 10 years.
Yeah,
so,
but don't worry, Mexico's going to pay us back for that wall.
They are? Isn't that exciting? Well, we got El Chapo now.
Oh,
so
yeah.
That's exciting.
El Chapo's here.
El Chapo
That's
is
what I'm
here.
saying.
Yeah, El Chapo's like a couple of miles away from where we are right now.
Oh, my God.
Staring at a
What if
wall.
he just pops through the basement floor like,
Hey, guys.
hola?
We would have such a great guest. El Chapo
Right?
would be so fun.
He should try the flautas here.
Oh, he would love the food here. Absolutely. Here at the Creek in the Cave, 1093 Jackson Avenue. Come on down and get some flautas. That's my personal favorite. It's very tasty. So, fascinating stuff happening all around. As far as emotion and tensions in the country, it does seem to be fairly high right now. And hopefully things can just sort of, we'll keep it. We got to keep an eye on what this guy is up to. We got to keep an eye on what he's up to. But it is fascinating to see a person who ran a campaign to blow up the two major parties, ran an insurgent campaign from the Republican Party, now take office and be the leader of the free world. It is sitting in, huh? It's settling in.
It's starting to feel real. Yeah.
And the American people, I think, they don't pay attention to politics. And like you said, Travis, get involved, call your state legislators, and run for something. I have some big breaking news that I will announce very soon, but I'm not going to announce it right now at the advice of campaign manager Travis Irvine.
Don't say nothing.
But we got some big news coming in the future. All right, Marcus, anything else we want to talk about here?
I think that's it, man.
I think that's good. I'll read some viewer emails here at the end of the episode also. And, if you thanks so much for listening to the show. You can tweet me at Ben Kissel, tweet at Marcus Parks. And Travis, let's see, I know you got to get out of here. So where can people find you and what are you up to?
Oh, Travis Irvine USA on Twitter, and you can find my stories on Mediaite.com. It's a fun site where they take all the big stories that are happening in political news as well as just in news, what's happening on all the 24-hour news networks. And, my job is to essentially interview these people outside of CNN and MSNBC and Fox News. But, man, that is really hard. So check me out on Mediaite.com while I'm still there.
That's perfect. Yes, check them out indeed. And I also want to say I met I know I'm forgetting her name, but you'll remember who you are. We met in the back of the Union Transfer where we did our live last podcast and left in Philly, and she works with Title IX. We talked about Title IX a little bit on the last episode. She swears by it. She absolutely loves it. And so I want to tell her again, please email me, the benefits of Title IX and how you see it, being a good fit for universities and things like that. All right, we'll do some viewer emails and listener emails, and thanks so much for being with us, Travis.
Thank you.
All right, well, that was fun with Travis.
Oh, yeah.
Wild guy.
Great guy.
Yeah, he didn't have to do his Alex Jones impression because we had Alex Jones on. So that was really good. I want to thank Parker Sesteric. He sent me a message, and he was the one who mentioned it was $9.7 trillion that the Republicans were going to add to the budget. So thank you so much for reaching out. So let's just do a few emails. I got a bunch of them. And but now, Marcus, let's see. Do you want to read this first one?
Sure.
Or at least some of it. We can't read the whole thing. I say make it blurby, but people, I think they like to type. And once they start typing, they can't stop typing.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, we deal with very complicated issues here. And
yeah, but so does Trump. He just tweets. he's the president, and he can get it in 140 characters
yeah,
or
he
less.
can get it in 140 characters. Why can't you, dumb asshole?
Oh, leave him alone, Marcus.
Trump's the smart one. Don't you know this?
I didn't know that. Is he the smart one?
Well, pretty much what this guy is, Steve said in his email is that he says, I do not believe that Republicans in their base really give a shit about small government and that they will abandon their principles now that they're in power, as they always seem to do. So now that they are in power, how do you see the Dems negotiating? Do you see them willing to reach across the aisle to make compromises where they have common ground, or do you see them obstructing at every turn? He said, sorry, it's not a blur, but thanks for reading, you Fox News scum.
Fox News scum. Very nice. Well, thank you so much for that.
Didn't someone yell that at you at the live show?
Live show. Yeah, I get that a lot.
Those 3 Fox News scum.
It's fun though. I wish they would have me on more. I'm not even on the network enough to be scum anymore.
It's punchy.
Ah, dang it. Interesting. Obviously now they have the Congress. The Republicans have the House and the Senate. So they have the Congress, much like Obama did in 2008. So they do have these 2 years now to really push through their policies. They have to get Obamacare. If they're going to replace it, if they're going to repeal it, they have to replace it, and they have yet to come up with a plan. When it comes to the Democrats obstructionist, being an obstructionist on every turn, I have to say historically the Democrats have been more willing to compromise. I mean, they certainly were. They should have been a little bit more of an obstructionist during W. That's for damn sure. It would have been nice if people like Hillary Clinton, for example, and many others, except for Bernie Sanders and my boy Russ Feingold, most of them supported the war and things like that. So they do seem to be more willing to compromise traditionally. This is a different time now. Again, we have the 3.3 million people marching over the weekend. I feel like the Democratic Party is more entrenched and more they feel. It's funny because usually when a person's elected, the elected gets the mandate. In this situation, I almost think it's flipped.
Yeah.
I think the mandate is on the Democratic Party to represent the millions and millions and millions of people who just feel completely out of touch with this administration. So I think the mandate's now on the Democratic Party, and I think we're seeing the grassroots of that party really come together, and if they are able to mobilize and create their form of sort of a Tea Party, which again does tend to benefit more conservative-minded individuals, because I think they're slightly less, ironically enough, concerned about self and self-individualism on the right, even though that's sort of a cornerstone of their of their politics in theory. Is you're your own man, you're your own woman, you can do anything in this country. At the end of the day, they do fall in line, like we talked about on the episode, when it comes to Republicans now fully on board with Donald John Trump. So I think we can expect to see the Democrats fight more in these 2 years, certainly than they did when the last Republican was in office, which was, of course, W. And I hope they do, because that's what this country needs now. This country is going to need a real firm opposition when the opposition is needed. Obviously, again, like we talked about the Venn diagram of policy when it comes to TPP and NAFTA, Democrats probably aren't going to push back too much on that, even though obviously TPP passed under a Democratic presidency. They have to. These next 2 years are going to be extremely important if the Democrats want to maintain relevance in 2018. If they want to win back the Senate, win back the House, they are going to need to fight tooth and nail. And we're seeing that with Elizabeth Warren. She gave a very good speech. Obviously, it has to be more than just words, although that's what got Trump elected. But Elizabeth Warren, she gave a great speech about, now we fight, and now we, it was really passionate. And so those voices of the Democratic Party, Chuck Schumer needs to he needs to shush Schumer, and the more vocal grassroots Democrats really need to show up in these 2 years. So that's a great question, and thanks so much for asking it. All right, I got one here. This one's just entitled, Fuck You. It says, fuck you. In spite of the subject line, I'm a huge fan. She found us through My Favorite Murder, and then she found Last Podcast on the Left, and she just went so on. And we hear that all the time. Mm-hmm. And, we got to thank My Favorite Murder. They've been so nice to us, and thank them. So thanks for mentioning us. So this was from an older episode, but we were talking about how I'll just read it. The other day I was listening to Top Hat. I think it was Palestine, Do You Mind, which was amazing. Palestine, you mind?
So it's Palestine. You mind?
And we're going to talk. We have somebody who lived in Israel who we'll get to here. And she says, I was right there with you when you were talking about the plight of some of the folks living closer geographically to the center of the country. They are also marginalized. They are too silenced. You know. And then she said, then about blacks, you said, what if they were if they were so concerned about the election, they should have gone out and voted. Just in case you don't have anyone else in your life who will say this to you about this issue anyway. Fuck you, Ben Kissel. That's very nice of you. Thank you. How many times do black people have to build this nation? Should the Jews have been more politically savvy? Was the Holocaust their fault? Are kids riding bikes just asking to be picked up by pedophiles? And then she says, I know what Marcus Parks would say. What would you say, Marcus?
That is it kids' faults that they're getting picked up by pedophiles?
Well, if that's the part of the question you want to focus on. And then she said, so fuck you and you're brilliant. Keep up the good work. Don't be an asshole. And to prove I'm not just some politically correct, tree-hugging, bleeding heart liberal, I loved both of the Black Serial Killer episodes. Absolutely hilarious. And that was from Yvette. Thank you so much, Yvette, for writing in. What I was referring to there in that episode was just about it was the low voter turnouts. It was more of an indictment on Hillary and her campaign. The low voter turnout was a huge detriment to the Democrats and to Hillary's campaign, and that's all I was saying. I mean, I'm not blaming people for not being inspired to go out and vote for a candidate if that candidate doesn't inspire them. And I think that was sort of the overall message. In no way am I blaming individuals who were marginalized throughout the Trump primary process for being the reason that he got elected. I mean, there was many vocal people from all over, all walks of life, people of color, people with different religions outside of the mainstream Christian philosophy of the country, even though it's not officially a Christian nation. It basically is. Mm-hmm. So I was not trying to blame those people. It was just really more of an indictment on where the mistakes of the Democratic Party were, and they certainly made a massive mistake not being able to mobilize huge groups of people that really are required for them to be mobilized in order for them to win. And I think that stemmed with Hillary Clinton's record, the 94 Crime Act, the 1033 program, all those things that we don't need to rehash right now. But thank you so much. That was your question. I totally understand, and I apologize if it came across as if I was victim blaming or something like that. No one wants to do that. All right, Marcus. So we got another one from now. This person's name is Autumn Storm, right?
Yeah,
Sounds
Autumn
like a
Storm,
superhero. Awesome.
She says, it's important to note that there are huge communities of secular individuals living in Israeli territories that are second and third generation Palestinians. Secular Jews and Muslim Palestinians live next door to one another, even intermarry, and nobody really cares about the state territory issues. But for those people that do, the number one point to remember is that Palestine from the beginning has refused to recognize Israel's, quote, right to exist. When discussing territory and states with the UN in the 60s and even until now, the leaders of Israel have looked for ways to negotiate and share space. The Palestinian leadership, on the other hand, has never budged on their stance that Israel should not exist in the first place, and they will not be satisfied with a two-state solution because there should not be an Israel, nor should there be Jews at all.
All right, so that is a great reminder. First of all, that there are moderates in Israel and Palestine. We often don't talk about that. It's always the squeaky wheel, gets the oil, and I think that that's unfortunate. That you never think about people living in Israel being Jewish or being Palestinian and actually intermarrying. We never hear about those stories. All we hear about is the violence, and that is a good point about Palestine. Just not believing, and this is the thing with Israel. People don't believe it's a state, and that is a strange thing to have to validate and have to fight against if you are the Israelis. And I understand this is why Benjamin Netanyahu was able to run on such a tribalistic platform in a lot of ways, and certainly anti-Palestinian and anti-Muslim because the rhetoric is so hard on the other side. It is a strange thing to just constantly have to argue for your existence. And so I understand from the Jewish perspective, that's exactly what they have to do. I mean, no one is discrediting America as a nation, or Russia as a nation, or China as a nation, or Taiwan. That's up for debate. But and so that is an interesting thing that the Israelis have to go through, and that's a good point, and it's we have to keep that into perspective when talking about Israel, and that's why people on the right are so, oh my God. I criticized Benjamin Netanyahu on Red Eye a year or something ago, and I got like death threats. People were so pissed because that's how serious the conflict is, and how serious the opposition is to the Israeli people, the Palestinians, many of them, and the Iranians, obviously, which is why, of course, the nuclear deal was so looked down upon by Israelis when it came to Obama's nuclear deal with the Iranians, because the Iranians don't believe that Israel is a state that should exist. So that's a good thing to remember, and it's also really fun and interesting to hear about moderates living in those places who are coming together and getting along, and I wish we could hear a little bit more about those things.
Well, they're just people. We
They're just people.
We have to remember that every single country on Earth is filled with just people. Every single country on Earth, every single state in America is filled with just people trying to get by, and we can't ever lose sight of that.
Absolutely not. And I wish it would be nice if we could hear a little bit more about it.
Yeah.
And that's why it's so fun to do these emails. And please email me at benk721@gmail.com. And then finally, I just want to read this one. It was just a nice one. It's from Mary Jane, who I love her name, and I love a product that's nicknamed after her also. She wanted to give a big time shout out for all the entertainment on last podcast on the left and Abe Lincoln's Top Hat. She has a relatively stressful job. She works as a social worker. Oof. I can't tell you how many people have come up to me who work in social work.
Yeah.
We have a lot of listeners who do it's the Lord's work or Satan's work or whatever deity you want to praise. It is such a difficult job.
It is.
And we have, there was a woman I was talking to in Philly who worked in social work, and she just thanked us because obviously my background in being a foster brother and being a foster home basically my entire life. We talk about it a lot, and it's just not spoken about. And you forget that these are not mainstream conversations, and they really should be. Social work is such a task and such a chore, and it just feels like they get no help everywhere they turn. Either people don't want to hear about, children who are abused or poor or a person of color or, whatever it might be. It's taboo in some places. And then, of course, financially, it's not like the federal government is giving them buku bucks. As a matter of fact, they tend to be part of, Head Start, for example. It's a great federal program. My little brother went to it, and without that, his education experience would have been far, far worse. When the Republicans promise to cut certain things and make the government smaller, they don't make the government smaller. They just cut these, like, for example, perfect example, Donald Trump wants to cut PBS.
Yeah.
He wants to make that private. He wants to, that is not even it is like nothing. It is nothing on the federal budget. But people can hear PBS and they say, oh, that's a trigger. Oh, guess government is getting smaller. It's not getting smaller.
Yeah, the National Endowment for the Arts.
Exactly. It's always those things on the butcher block. And those are all symbolic things. Planned Parenthood is the same way. $500 million a year. It's a splash in the. It is nothing. It is a raindrop in the ocean. But people hear it and they have an emotional trigger to it, and then they say, "Oh, he is making the government smaller," but it's just not true. And so often, it's the social programs that are so unbelievably needed in this country. Especially with the ability to go through a Walmart and get a gun at any time. People talk about mental health all the time, and these are the front lines of mental health in this country, social workers.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for listening. She says she likes to listen to the podcast in a car as a bit of a breather to offset some of the daily shit show situations she runs into. So you can imagine how awful the shit show situations she runs into are if she listens to like Jack the Ripper to relax, And she says, it may sound silly, but given my profession, I find myself pretty overwhelmed and daunted by the prospect of a Donald Trump presidency. I find that your commentary often brings me a bit of the levity I need to cope, and yet I respect your thoughts and opinions beyond just a distraction to make me laugh. So thank you so much for listening, Mary Jane. We really appreciate it, and thank you for what you do. And please email me more stories about your jobs and stuff like that, because I'm telling you, going out to these live shows and meeting the listeners, everyone has a story, and, they're always fascinating. Everyone, even people who are like, oh, I have a boring job, and it's just nothing is boring. There's always something interesting, and we cannot stress enough how wonderful it is to meet you guys and girls, but you know what I mean, when we go to these live shows. Yeah. I mean, it's so phenomenal.
It's pretty great.
All right. Well, I guess we can wrap up this episode, and we'll do more emails. I have to find a way to organize them better. So I apologize if you I got a lot of them, and then, I lose everything. I don't know how I lose things on an iPhone.
I don't know either.
But somehow it goes away. I think because the garbage is so close to they got to stop doing that. Anyway. Oh, and I also want to clarify, it was an MI6 agent, British intelligence, who leaked the dossier, which I did know, but someone said I said it was WikiLeaks. Anyway, all right. Find Marcus Parks on Twitter at Marcus Parks. Marcus Parks on Instagram at Marcus Parks. I'm Ben Kissel on Twitter. Please tweet at me. Follow me. We're doing absolutely wonderful. Instagram Ben Kissel 1. And thanks so much for listening. We'll talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
For more shows like the one you just listened to, go to cavecomedyradio.com.